Let's get into it. Soul Not For Sale podcast. Thank you for all the support, for the clap. Thank you for all the haters as well, because I know if you've grown to get annoyed by the clap, that means you're watching. So thank you guys. Thank all you guys so much. Let's get into it. We're talking about hate speech, freedom of speech. We got Joe Rogan at the top, of course, but we actually have 3 Joe Rogan clips for you guys today. So Joe Rogan at the top, then we're going to be talking about the new bill that Canada is about to have that's being proposed. In this bill, just to give you a little taste of what this bill is about, you could receive a life sentence for hate speech. You could possibly be fined $50,000. And if someone decides to turn you in for hate speech online, they could be rewarded $20,000 and not have to identify themselves. Wild. So we're going to be starting off with the first problem, which is the leadership. Trudeau. Joe Rogan's going to talk about Trudeau. Bill Maher is going to talk about Trudeau. Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank is going to talk about Trudeau. Then we have Joe Rogan again talking about hate speech, labeling things as hate speech and how dangerous that can be, how far it can go. Then we're going to have the breakdown of this bill. We're going to hear from the Canadian Constitution Foundation and some other people that are just breaking down everything you need to know about the bill, and something called pre-crime, which is wild to hear. And then we talk about who decides what hate is. And from there, it's going to be another Rogan clip. Then we're going to have Elon Musk chime in, then Jordan Peterson talking about free speech and the right to defend, and then Jordan Peterson again talking about hate speech. Let's get into it. This is a very Orwellian episode. Don't forget about I am Coach Colin. We got Soul Not For Sale stuff. We have Soul Not For Sale again. Soul Not For Sale again. Unjabbed and proud. Let's go. We have all sorts in here. Discount code is I am Coach Colin, all capital letters, all one word, 1 L in the name Colin, gets you 10% off. Public Enemy #1 as well. Take your pick. Let's get into this first clip.
Oh yeah, but they're quiet. They're
these. I love them.
Yeah,
we got everything there.
Let's just hit it, dude. Who cares about the drugs? God, America's.
You sent me that once a month.
Behind the back and then in.
Listen, this is the best place to be.
Well,
despite all the chaos exists in the world. We just talked about Scotland's trying to arrest comedians.
I know, it's so easy here. It's great.
Oh, they used to have Sean Connery hitting women. Those are the days.
We didn't talk about that fucking guy in Belgium. Jamie, show the memes so these guys can see the shit that this guy was like sharing.
Gerard Depardieu.
The memes are fucking so innocuous. They're so nothing. They don't even come close to the memes we share.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Arrested?
You know what?
How did they go to that?
Because America rules at memes too, bitch.
America's number one.
Number one in
keep
memes.
shitting on America, but everybody's trying to move here. So what does that tell you?
What?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, everybody keeps coming here.
Exactly. You sound like my uncle 15 years ago.
That's people coming here. It's
You're talking about my grandparents.
I'm
second generation.
Sicilian.
All right, who's talking shit on America like that?
All kinds of locals.
No, just online. Shut it off. No one's really doing
Everybody
that.
knows we're number one.
Well, how about I'm going to leave if this guy wins? You're like,
That's
but you're
my
not going to
favorite.
leave.
Yeah, but they don't ever leave.
They never
maybe
leave.
they will.
It's great. We got Chipotle.
Everything except PTO.
This
We're
time
bad-
they'll
we're bad
go
in
to
that.
Canada where it's 1,000 times worse.
Yeah.
Maybe this time.
How would you like to live in Minnesota if it was fucking gayer? Welcome to fucking Canada.
Right. Gayer and
Imagine
colder.
Minnesota, but not cool at all. Just gay.
Yeah, no Somalians.
Yeah.
Unless Trudeau's on Halloween.
Let's get the right one.
Bro, they might get rid of that dude. If they do, they can pull it around.
Who?
Trudeau.
Oh.
That Pierre Polivet. How do you say it?
He's pretty sexy, that guy.
Polivet. Did I say it right? No, I didn't.
He's very French.
Let's also be honest,
He's
dude.
brilliant.
We've
He's
been trashing
smart.
We've been trashing Canada because of how gay Trudeau is, but Canada does fucking rock.
Canada rules in the summer.
Canada's one of
It
the
fucking
all-time.
rules.
Canada
Halifax
has-
April.
Oh, you pissing in there?
You
Halifax
son of a
April.
bitch. He's pissing in Bud Light cans, this dirty bitch.
Ew.
Shane, make this part of your new campaign where I piss in bottles.
Here, why don't you?
Yeah, try to ruin my campaign, you little nasty
All right, use
motherfucker.
this whiskey bottle.
Piss in that
It's
whiskey.
already
Don't
open.
piss in that.
Bodega
Yeah.
cat, get a bottle. Piss in
Bodega.
it.
Piss in the
No,
bodega.
don't
Yeah.
piss in a bottle that's half full.
Don't make it.
Someone might drink it, you monster.
Don't make it
Good
taste
point.
better.
You didn't throw the
Get a
cork
bottle.
out.
Online. Piss in it. But yeah.
That's the
No,
the
Canada
line.
rocks, dude.
Well,
Canada
Toronto's a
line.
fun town, and Vancouver's fun. Good,
Yeah.
good crowds.
That's
Good crowds, good chicks, good drugs. Everything rules in
if
Canada.
you bring up Trudeau, though, they go ape
Who
shit.
brings up the government? Can you imagine just being in a
everywhere
bar
I
going,
go.
like, I hate crap.
Everywhere I go, if I go to Canada, I'm like, fuck Trudeau.
Yeah,
I don't go to Canada.
I do.
Piss
go
is
all
the
the time.
line,
I
right?
say fuck Trudeau. They get fired up.
The
But
truckers hate him.
The truckers hate him.
Regular people hate him.
historically, Canada's a good country. They go hard, dude.
They're nice people.
They were at
drink.
D-Day. They were at
That's
fucking D-Day.
why they're so subject to this bullshit. Because they're trying to be nice. That's why they're so vulnerable. Because they're trying to be nice. Because they're genuinely nice people.
Sorry.
It's cold as fuck up there. People cooperate. They're nice.
All right, I'm gonna get fired up. All right,
Get fired up.
this is they're one of those. They're one of those.
He is a big fella.
No, they're not that fired up.
Fired up.
I might be dumb and wrong, but those are one of those countries that, like the UK, like when they go to war, which they always do, they always call on the bros. It's always Scotland,
Canada,
Australia, all the dominions that are just like settler white people.
We've been making money for you all these years.
When they ever
We've been
call,
printing our
like, when
money.
they call on like Australia and Canada to go to war, they go to war, dude, and they go hard. They've always gone hard. Canada rules. Historically, Canada rules.
Historically.
Yeah. Right now, they're being gay.
I
That's
think
all right.
Banff is the
America's
same
being
as it's
gay.
always
Canada
been.
has a fantastic history
Yeah.
of combat sports
Yeah.
athletes.
And they
Solid
go,
chick
wow,
hockey
McDonald's?
players.
And comedians.
Rory?
Yeah.
Norm MacDonald.
Norm?
Yeah.
The other guy.
Jim Carrey. Yeah.
GSP.
Yeah.
Those donuts.
But
Great
for
donuts.
fighters, man,
Tim
was
Hortons'
funny.
rules.
Canada goes hard.
Listen, there was a guy in the 1980s.
Whistler's awesome.
There was a guy in the 1980s. There was a French Canadian named Jean-Yves Theriault, and he
Sounds
was
Canadian.
a fucking assassin in kickboxing. He was.
There you go. Historically, Canada rules. Now, I wanted to set you guys up with that clip. It's getting a little wild, believe me. This episode progressively gets more serious and more serious as we go along. But I wanted to hit you guys with that first. Some people don't like all the talking over each other. Man, that's what podcasting started as. You don't even know. That is the foundation of podcasting. A bunch of friends, cigars, smoke everywhere, just talking about how Canada rules, but then also calling it gay. You know what I mean? Like that's how you go. Now, the first problem, and he's right. Historically, Canada's great. It's a great nation. It's a great nation with the ability to be, for years, Rogan, everybody would like it so much more. There's a comedy festival that happens in Montreal. It's called Just for Laughs. For years, that's where every comedian wanted to go. You wanted to get over to Canada so you could be in that festival because that was going to put you on the map. It was known. The Canadian Comedy Festival, Just for Laughs, was the place to be. Historically, incredible place. But since Trudeau has gotten in, and I'm sure there's older people who are like, no, it happened with this person or that person. But since Trudeau has been in office, it has just gone down and down and downhill. Let's hear from Bill Maher talk about leadership a little bit. Bill Maher comparing Trudeau to Hitler because of the way he dealt with the truckers and the unvaccinated.
Justin Trudeau. What? You're laughing, but Justin Trudeau, I mean, I thought he was kind of a cool guy. Then I started to read what he said. This is a couple of weeks ago. He was, or maybe this is September, but he was talking about people who are not vaccinated. He said they don't believe in science. They're often misogynistic, often racist. No, they're not.
That was not smart of him at all.
Right. He said, but they take up space. And with that, we have to make a choice in terms of a leader as a country. Do we tolerate these people? It's like, tolerate these? Now you do sound like Hitler.
No, that was...
And recently he talked about them holding unacceptable views.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that Trudeau said those things.
You didn't see the blackface? I mean, he's no, I'm kidding about that.
Which really kind of brings me to a point of, we're talking about this new bill that Canada is about to pass that is just wildly oppressive on the Canadian people. Is Trudeau going to go down for hate speech for the things he said? He did. He called the truckers racist, misogynistic. He said that they had Nazi ties. He put through a little defamation in there just for good measure. He just said that out of nowhere and then just said he didn't say it. And this is not the first time he's done things like that. Would that go under this new law of hate speech? I don't know. But let's hear from Kevin O'Leary now talking about Justin Trudeau as well. And then we're going to move on to the real problem. Joe Rogan's going to be talking about branding things as hate speech with Jimmy Dore. Let's go.
Canadian roots. Prime Minister Trudeau has been very critical about the prospect this country could be on the verge of returning Donald Trump to power. He said that Trump is an isolationist. We've heard Christine Lagarde saying much the same of the European Central Bank, other leaders abroad who fear that prospect and say it would send the world backward. What do you think of that?
Well, I say these words with no disrespect. Canada, and I'm an investor, I look at it from that perspective. I'm a Canadian citizen, I'm an Irish citizen, I'm an Emirati citizen. Canada has one of the best natural resource bases on Earth. It's one of the richest countries on Earth from a natural resource basis. It's managed by idiots. Trudeau is the worst prime minister ever put in power. Very successful politician, no executional skills. Hopefully, we will thank him for his service within the next 18 months. It's so important to Canada that he move on. And I mean no disrespect, but full disrespect. Very successful politician, incredibly weak manager.
So you argue he has not taken advantage of those resources. That's what that comes down to, right?
Oh, it's much worse than that. I wouldn't let him manage a candy store.
All right, I'll put you down as a maybe on the Prime Minister for the time being. So, Congressman...
Put you down as a maybe. Tell us how you really feel. Couldn't manage a candy store. Now, why do I play these clips? Because it's, as we talk about this, it's the root cause. He is the root cause. The leadership is the root cause of this. And this is something that he is putting forth. His party, his people are introducing into the Canadian government and trying to make law and pushing this upon the people. So I think it is important to actually, touch on the real problem at hand, which is him. And as Kevin O'Leary said, it is so important in the next 18 months that all of Canada thank him for his service. No one's going to thank him, but as long as he leaves, it will be perfect. Also, he's been saying that he is thinking about leaving. He said, these are his words, "I think about leaving this crazy job every day." Go. That's it. There's other people that want to run the show. Go ahead. Makes perfect sense. Get on out of here. Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan talking about hate speech. Let's go.
I mean, there's no, one of the things that they're doing is they use that blanket term hate speech. Yeah.
So, by the way, they're trying to put a bill. Have you heard about this in Congress to make police a protected class of people? So if you say shit about them, now it's considered hate speech. Did you know that?
What?
Yeah, they're trying to make people. Yes.
So fuck the police would be
considered hate speech.
So they would just retroactively arrest NWA.
They could.
What about Ice-T? He was a cop killer. Remember?
Right.
I'm a motherfucking cop killer.
And so now, if you do have a rally that's against the police, that's a hate rally.
Yeah.
And they can take your YouTube channel down if you said hate stuff about the cops and stuff. Wow. So that's where we are. Hate speech. The fuck? How come I'm not allowed to hate shit, by the way?
Right.
I hate Nazis. Can I say I hate fucking
that's
Nazis?
Hate speech.
I hate the KKK. Can I say I hate them?
That's hate speech. You strongly dislike the KKK. You can strongly dislike something.
When I was a kid, I hated the fucking Dodgers. I know.
Hate speech.
Because I was a Cubs fan, and the Dodgers always kicked our ass.
Hate speech. Yeah, hate speech is a strange blanket term, almost like drugs. Like drugs is caffeine, but it's also heroin. It's like drugs.
What's wrong with hate? I don't understand. There's hate out there. So what?
Yeah.
So what's wrong? So by the way,
But it's a bad way of expressing things. Like hate speech it's not a good descriptive. Because
I agree.
When you stop, what does it entail? Like, I had a conversation with a woman at YouTube about Sam Harris and Douglas Murray in a podcast where they had a conversation and someone put it on their YouTube channel in their playlist. Just put it in their playlist, and they got a community guidelines strike.
Oh my
God! I asked why, and the woman said very cleanly it was hate speech. And I said, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Did you listen to it? These are two intellectuals. These are two public intellectuals discussing immigration and some of the problems that Europe is having right now, and you decided that that's hate speech, and you don't even know what they said. But the fact that she so confidently described it in that way sort of embodies what this problem is that they have these blanket terms they're able to throw on problems, and there's a million other fires to put out, so there's no more need to put any more consideration into this. This guy's a problem. This is problematic. This is hate speech. Shut it down.
That's exactly what it is. Next, I'm going to be showing you guys just a full breakdown of what this bill entails. Now, why am I saying it's oppressive? Why am I saying it's authoritarian? Why am I saying it's Orwellian? Well, believe me, as you start hearing about it, it is all those things. But to just touch on what Joe just said, the problem with hate speech, branding things as hate speech, as it quickly becomes not what you say, but who you are. That's it. With that example he just gave of Sam Harris and another gentleman, it was because of what they knew Sam Harris to be about. And obviously it's the worst of it because, if someone writes a smear or a hit piece, they write your worst attributes and they exaggerate them and they talk about your good attributes. None. So then hate speech becomes, who are you? Well, you're a problematic person. Everything you have to say becomes hate speech. It's a dangerous, dangerous road ahead. Now listen to this. This is from the Canadian Constitution Foundation. I didn't know Canada had a constitution. I want to find out more about this. I actually want to interview this lady if I can. But listen to what she has to say. She breaks down what's in this bill.
One of the other things the legislation does is increase penalties for the hate crime of advocating genocide, which was previously punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment. It now carries the possibility of life imprisonment. It also proposes that anyone who breaks any other federal law, quote, motivated by hate, be found guilty of a hate crime and subject to the maximum life sentence. So to be clear, that provision is not limited just to the criminal code. All federal statutes are included. So what exactly is hate speech? And we at the Canadian Constitution Foundation have been asked this repeatedly since this new law, Bill C63, has been proposed. Where is the line between legal speech and hate speech? And the problem is no one exactly knows. And that's what makes this law such a big threat to freedom of expression. My colleague Josh Jahaz has a great thread about this exact issue on X, which I will link to below, but I'll also summarize some of the high-level principles for you. In 2014, the Supreme Court said in a case called R and Whatcott that hatred is only the most extreme manifestation of the emotion captured by the words detestation and vilification, and that only that type of speech can be outlawed without violating Section 2B of the Charter, which guarantees the right to freedom of expression. Whatcott says that this does not include expression which, quote, while repugnant and offensive, does not incite the level of abhorrence, delegitimization, and rejection that risks causing discrimination and other harmful effects. That speech is protected. And this notion is sort of actually built into Bill C63. But how do we know if what we are seeing rises to the level of detestation or vilification? The case, Whatcott, tells us to look at what are referred to as the hallmarks of hatred. And this is where things get really, really dicey, because some of the hallmarks of hatred are things that people may say regularly and, frankly, should be allowed to say. And Josh gives a few examples in his thread. One hallmark of hatred is blaming a group's members for the current problems in society, alleging that this group is a, quote, powerful menace. So Josh points out that this could capture a lot of EDI training that we see. EDI or DEI consultants talk about white supremacy and white people being a menace in society, that feminists often talk about the patriarchy in these types of terms. Is that hate speech? Does that have the hallmarks of hatred? Even though I don't think that type of training is especially helpful for society or a good thing or a nice way to talk about people, I don't think we should be criminalizing DEI trainers. Another example Josh gives is hate speech, and this is from the Whatcott case, quote, further delegitimizes the targeted group by suggesting its members are illegal or unlawful. And Josh points out that we have seen a number of irregular border crossings, in particular in Quebec, and a lot of false asylum claims from, certain countries being made. And if someone is to suggest that these people are illegal or unlawful, will that person be subject to a human rights complaint? I don't think that that is an outcome that we would want. Another hallmark of hatred is labeling a group as, quote, liars, cheats, criminals, and thugs, a parasitic race, or pure evil. And obviously, these are terrible things to say, but should people risk jail or fines for losing their temper for calling, for example, a religious group, an extreme religious group, for example, pure evil? I don't think that that would be a good outcome that we would want. For example,
now her example is the West Borough Baptist Church. That's her example. But I'm sure you can come up with your own examples. How deep is this thing going to go? The hallmarks of hate. That could be That could be, especially, I'm going to show you a clip now talking about how it impacts religion. So that could be somebody chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That could be Jewish people saying that we're the chosen people. That can be what we're seeing now on Twitter right now. People are saying, Candace Owens being one of them, saying Christ is king. And now people are looking at that as an anti-Semitic dog whistle of sorts. You know, I'm so sad that I know the term dog whistle. So sad. But how far does it go? Now all of a sudden, if you say Christ is king, or if you're Jewish and you've been taught we're the chosen people, you say that out loud, all of this can be considered demeaning to another person, another group of people. You could be putting yourself in this supremacy realm. So all that has to go away. Anything you have to say about a law, I'm not sure what is said in that religious text. I know about Judaism and Christianity the most, but anything you might have to say as a Muslim person that kind of puts you above people or puts another group down, that won't be tolerated, even if it's in your religious scripts, even if it's something that you have all been taught to believe for thousands of years, doesn't matter. That could go against it. The hallmarks of hatred, that runs so deep. And then when she brought up the DEI training, you know, maybe that'd be a win for white men, because white men are getting trounced on nowadays. So now all of a sudden when someone says you're white, now all of a sudden, now you can be like, hey, this is hate speech. But the law probably won't come and help you. Probably, that's my prediction. They won't come and help you. But I don't know, man. I've always just had the thought process, and we'll get to this clip right now. I've always had the thought process that, you know, when someone says something hateful, the best thing is to have a proper rebuttal that is, you know, good. You know, the best combat to hate speech is better speech, good speech. That is the best thing to do. Because if you have someone who is saying something that you've branded as hateful, and the recourse is that they get silenced and thrown in jail, that is not a place to be in. You will eventually cross that line yourself. This is not even something like that I have to explain. You will eventually cross the line yourself, because it will get more narrow, with hate speech, it'll get more broad and more broad and more broad. And you're going to cross that line. And the penalties are going to be so crazy. You're going to go to jail. I don't know, man. And then when it comes to things being said online, well, that's it. They're just going to go back. Someone's going to unearth something. I mean, it already happens. And, you know, people get death by media in cancellations. But we're talking about the government, a law operating the same way Twitter does. That's the real issue. The government starts operating the way social media does. And then all of a sudden, where you would just be canceled and maybe people would call where you work or this or that, the police are going to come to your door and say, we saw something that you said. And this is already happening in the world. But I want to shed light to it, because once it's happening in Canada, it is so likely to happen in the United States. I mean, 10 years ago, if you said, would that happen in Canada? You'd be like, imagine 20 years ago, would this happen in Canada? Absolutely not. But now it is. So now ask yourself, would this happen in the United States of America? Absolutely not. But who knows? It's so important to take in these stories, because you never know how you might be following the exact same footprints as a nation. And it's so important to see what they're going through and how they're getting to these points. Because it's a window into the near future. You can just look and see, like, okay, they got this government, okay, extremely liberal government. Okay, the guy was like a smooth talker. Okay, now he's saying hate speech. All right, now he's not allowing people to assemble. Okay, so you're allowed to assemble, but if you're near LGBTQ people and they feel in danger, then you can't assemble, and you might get charged $30,000 and you could face jail time. Oh, it's like, and that's a real thing. That's a real thing in Canada. So let's get into the next one. They actually touch on how this touches on religion and religious people And they're a Christian, so they are talking about Christianity. But this applies to all religions. You're Jewish, this could affect you. You're Muslim, this can affect you.
Jeff, you're warning about a new Canadian bill.
Wow. That's how I listen to it, guys. I'm sorry. I'm a maniac. Let's go.
C367, you've said that this bill could threaten Canadians' public expressions of faith. This is deeply concerning. What can you tell us about this proposal?
Well, I would say, so first of all, it amends the criminal code and it takes away some religious exemptions that protected Christians. So if you're in the United States, we saw the same kind of thing with the Equality Act that the Biden administration was trying to pass. And basically it creates hate speech laws. Some of those have already advanced in Canada, but Christians were protected. They said, well, if they're saying biblical things or if they're saying things according to their faith, whether that's Quranic or biblical or whatever, they're protected. And this is the alarming thing, is that this strips those out. There is no protection. And as always, this is what the dictators and the despots do overseas to strangle Christianity or whatever faith. They say, oh, we have religious freedom, but not in the public sphere. So it's the same game. It's the same game being advanced around the Western world, and even what we saw again with the Equality Act in the United States.
Well, and I think we have to put this against the backdrop, those who would dismiss concern about this, of what is going on all over the world, especially in the West. Look at Paavi Räsänen in Finland.
Yes.
Look at, case after case after case. She's been exonerated twice, essentially, and now they're appealing it to the Supreme Court. So there's a real move here in multiple countries to go after people of faith. How is the bill, and this is always interesting to me, how is it being promoted? Because, of course, they're not going out there and saying, we want to crack down on Christianity. How are they promoting this?
That's great. Yeah. So these, hate speech laws, they're always being promoted for the common good in one way or another. So whether that's we're going to protect LGBTQ followers or, those people as a class of people, or for anti-Semitism, it almost doesn't matter, because the hate speech laws always create division. They always create hatred. And look, these things always smack of Banana Republic, because very simply, here's how this thing works. This is people who are elected in a democracy, and it's almost like the Marxists. They get elected in a democracy, and they use the laws of the state and they twist them and they dismantle them. They dismantle the protections and go after their political enemies. It's total Banana Republic stuff. It's just not seen that way, but it should be.
So in this, in this provision, in this proposal, let's say somebody goes out there and they oppose the LGBTQ ideology. They say public things, maybe in interviews, or, I'm sure we don't know exactly how it would manifest itself, or they're advocating against transitioning children, sure, in the transgender issue. What would happen to them potentially if this were to pass?
Yeah, well, I interviewed a pastor recently who is a Canadian pastor who's been arrested a number of times for street evangelism. And again, here's what happens. So a lot of times he's not even being obnoxious. He's doing street evangelism, completely legal. And then the cops show up. So if he is in an area where people know who he is and their LGBTQ crowd, they will cause a complete ruckus. And then guess who gets arrested? So right now he can end up at the police station, but they say, wait a minute, there's no real case here. So lots of times that's even a game. They arrest him, take him off the streets, and then they say, well, there's no case, so we'll throw him out. Or as in the case of Paivi, as you said, what happens is then the Christian can be charged, and then those charges can stick. So they can receive fines or prison time. So there has to be, in a democracy, the bedrock of democracy is religious freedom, and religious freedom is so potent because it encapsulates a number of other freedoms. You have freedom of speech, assembly, thought, conscience. So again, to remove freedom of speech protections in a democracy is a nightmare, and it's signaling the death and the dying of democracy. It should be looked at in no other way. Anybody who's advancing this stuff is completely an enemy of democracy and is looking to get weapons to attack their political opponents.
Well,
yeah, Yeah, that's what it looks like. You know, one thing that he said in this whole thing, he was saying they twist laws, take away protections, and then prosecute their political enemies. And a lot of the times when we hear political enemies, the first name that comes to mind is Donald Trump. But with the scenario that's coming forth with this new law, it's not just going to be political enemies. It's going to be people who oppose the current government. That's what's going to end up happening. And it's so close. It feels so close to communism, because the next step from what he was talking about when it comes to that person who's evangelizing in the streets is getting arrested for practicing your religion. See, at first, it's just currently, you'll just be around a bunch of people who are LGBTQ. You are, I was going to say you're causing a scene, but they end up causing a scene around you, because that's always how it goes. They get all mad. Someone calls the cops. The cops see that you're at the center of this whole thing. They remove you and then, end up letting you go. What'll actually start to happen is you will be taken in, not just because you were causing a ruckus with those LGBTQ people, but because you were actually evangelizing in the first place, because you were saying these things, and it could be in the realm of hate speech. Because you will be, most of these guys, when they're around these people, they're talking about how the Bible sees people who are engaged in, same-sex affairs and everything like that. And it's not very kind, especially when someone's evangelizing. They're saying that you're sinning. They're, I don't want to say talking down to you, but they're telling you how things work biblically, where you're going to go, and that you should repent. That's going to become a problem. If you live in imagine you live in a Jewish neighborhood. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. Sometimes there'd be some holidays where they drive around with huge menorahs on their cars, playing wild music. And if you're Jewish, they, like at certain holidays, they'd come up to you with something and they'd ask you if you want to say a prayer and do this thing. And it's all in good spirits. It's all in the best spirits. It's just them trying to just spread the love. That's all they're trying to do. But now all of a sudden, if some guy does that, rabbi, whatever, and that person takes that as offense, they can all of a sudden start calling the cops. They could call the cops. They could get you arrested. You're spreading hate speech. You're just preaching your word. That's not my word. How dare you? I'm not allowed to do it. And that's what will end up happening. I can't do it as a Christian. Why can you do it as a Jewish person? And also the people who are Muslim as well. You won't be able to just do those things out in public. What happens when it gets to the point where a Muslim man drops in the middle of the street because they have to pray wherever they are, and the next thing you know, he's getting taken away because somebody finds it obscene? How deep does it go? And all of these things that I'm bringing up, you may be like, that's not what's happening. That's where it leads. I'm so confident in saying this because I watched Jordan Peterson in 2016 say where this is going, and no one believed him when he wouldn't use pronouns. Everyone was like, that's not where it goes. And he's like, yes, I am reading the books. I'm reading history. That is where it goes. Same goes for me. Same goes for you. You're exposed to the same things I am. We know where this is going. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Because when you look at it, when you look at what the end result is every time with these laws, it's always, this is for inclusion. This is to be a good person. We all want to be good people now, don't we? And we all nod and say yes. And then they walk away with more power. It's the same play every single time. They just wrap it up in something different. Even this bill that we're talking about, Bill C63, 63, like a robot, 63, Bill 63, it's wrapped up in child, we'll just say SA, assault, child images, things like that. It's wrapped up with that because you couldn't possibly be against a bill that is trying to protect children. You're not against that, are you? Again, back to being a good person. So a lot of people are going to be okay with it because that's going to be the main thing they know about it. But it comes with a host of other things, and you're going to hear about some of them right now. Let's get into it.
The Liberal government recently introduced their online hate legislation. While diving deep into it, it feels more like the Minority Report. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilly and Laurie Goldstein. Brian, I think our viewers would remember the Minority Report. It was a movie done. Tom Cruise was in it, but it was a science fiction book from 1956 by Philip Dick. And it's all about pre-crime, preventing pre-crime. And going into this online legislation that the Liberals just introduced, there's a portion of it that is trying to prevent pre-crime. What the hell is going on here?
It's if someone is suspected that they might partake in a hate crime, they can be arrested and put under house arrest to stop them from committing the crime. This is flagrantly unconstitutional. There's no way that this would stand. And you know, I actually think that of a few parts of the bill. This is a very problematic bill that the government is going to wrap itself up in the mantle of saying, we are protecting children. Why are you against protecting children from online harm? But you've got the pre-crime stuff. You've got life sentences for hate crimes. That's putting it up there with first-degree murder. Now, unless you commit a hate crime where you kill a bunch of people motivated by hate, I don't see that standing up in court. And it would be absolutely bizarre for that to stand. So there have been some calls to separate the bill out, the portions that deal with protecting kids from sexual exploitation and such, plus all this other stuff, which has nothing to do with protecting kids. Put them out as two bills, debate them, fix them, but this thing, it will not stand if it's passed.
You know, Laurie, far too often, a lot of these pieces of legislation get presented and they get heralded as, oh, this is great, we're protecting kids. But then you do a deep dive into the details and you find little nuggets like you can be put under house arrest for the thought that there could be a pre-crime in that you may be contemplating or something. This is scary.
Well, this, as Brian said, this was deliberate. It was political. There are aspects of the bill, as you both said, that are legitimate. Things like revenge porn, dealing with that, dealing with child exploitation, child porn, the abuse of children. Those are legitimate. But what they did was what got the headlines because people, it was released late, people read it. Oh, this isn't so bad. It's not as bad. But then when you do a deep dive, as both the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and the Canadian Constitution Federation have done. And remember, those were the two bodies that convinced a federal judge that Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act was an unjustified attack on the rights of Canadians. Yeah. They're saying exactly the same things about this bill. They both go, look, part of it is legitimate, the protection of children. It goes to the point, if you really care about that issue, then get that legislation through. There won't be a big fight about it as long as the wording is careful. But the two civil liberties associations say, like, this creation of this digital safety commission, which has the power to make up rules about what constitutes hate crime. These are going to be government appointees making rules, changing them. And as the Canadian Civil Liberties Association says, entitled them to be judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah. There's also an expansion of the Canadian Human Rights Code, where the commission can now impose fines of up to $50,000 on people who it says violates the code based on complaints from people who could be awarded up to $20,000 and in many cases will never have to identify themselves. The civil liberties, the two of them also say this is going to infringe on healthy conversation between young adults under 18 about issues like sexuality. It could impact reporting on these issues. The thing is, it's another assault on civil liberties, and it's hard to, like, I would say to the government, you lost to the CCL and the CCF on your emergency.
He just gets into some Canadian stuff there. Kidding. I just let the clip run a little long. But very interesting what he just said. And that's the main thing I wanted to focus on. The Digital Safety Committee, $50,000 fines, $20,000 rewards, and you don't have to identify yourself. You know who's going to end up the worst culprit? Who's going to end up just lambasted with complaints? Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson still lives in Canada. He already is in danger. I don't even know where they are in this case. He's already in danger of losing his license as a psychologist because he decided to speak negatively about the current government in charge, Justin Trudeau himself. Because he decided to speak negatively about him, all of a sudden, the Psychologists of Ontario, the Psychology Association of Ontario, whatever they're called, they decided, oh, some re-education is needed. And how do you think that happened? He said something about the government, and all of a sudden another body that is probably largely funded by the government decides that he needs to be re-educated. And also they said there was a series of complaints from people that weren't his clients at all, weren't his students at all, and remained unnamed. It's just going to happen again. And it's going to happen to more people. And it's going to conveniently happen every time you criticize the government. It's going to conveniently happen every time you push against a narrative. It's absolutely wild. And then when they talk about pre-crime, it sounds silly, but what are they talking about? And this is so 1984, but what are they talking about? They're talking about memes. They're talking about going into a group chat and seeing that you and your friends have been joking around about all sorts of things because it's just you and your boys in there. You're probably saying all sorts of things about women, about the government. You know, if it's a bunch of women, you're saying things about men, the patriarchy, whatever, what have you. You can look at anybody's group chat where it's a bunch of people joking and go, oh man, these people have some wild intentions. And even if they don't, well, at least they are suspects of pre-crime. And that's it. Memes? Oh, if you share the wrong meme, we already have people in the United States. There's a man in the United States going to jail. He's appealing it right now. Douglas Mackless, I believe his name is. Sorry if I got that name wrong, but I know his name's Douglas. He's appealing right now for a meme that he shared. He didn't even make the meme. So how deep is this going to go? And then we get to the point where hate crimes become hate speech. That's exactly what I was talking about with the religious stuff. Your hate crime is going to become your hate speech. It used to be if you called someone the N-word and then beat the hell out of them within inches of your life, that was a hate crime. Now it's just going to be you called them that and you guys kind of got in each other's face and the police take you away, and what happened? You actually committed a hate crime because it's just the speech. That's what's happening right now. This is the precursor to that happening. Is if this gets put into actual law, that's what's going to be happening next. I just wanted to shine light on it because I see when I look at all my analytics and stuff, there's a portion of you that are Canadian. You should know about this. You should be saying something. You guys should be going to local government, whoever that is. If you're left or right, you should be very concerned about this. Because again, you will cross the line. They will make it so broad that it will be unavoidable for you to cross the line. And in order for you not to cross that line, you are going to have to be so quiet and so domesticated as a person that you're not going to be able to express any parts of your freedom whatsoever. And the last thing I'll say on this is the government is going to decide what hate is. And that's the worst thing. And that's what we're moving on to now. What is hate? This is another Joe Rogan clip. He's talking with the former head of Twitter about how they decide what hate speech is. And we're going to get a little deeper into that. So we have the former head of Twitter, the new head of Twitter, and then we have Jordan Peterson. Let's get into it.
How do you decide whether or not this is a valid discussion or if this is, air quotes, hate speech, which is there's some things that are hate speech, and there's sometimes people use the term hate speech, and it's just a cheap way to shut down a conversation.
Yeah. So the simple answer is we look at conduct. We don't look at the speech itself. We look at conduct. We look at how the tool is being used. And you're right in that, like, I think when people see Twitter, they see and they expect it to be a public square. They can go into that public square. They can say whatever they want. They can get on a pedestal, and people might gather around them and listen to what they have to say. Some of them might find it offensive and they leave. The difference is there's also this concept of this megaphone, and the megaphone can be highly targeted. now with Twitter as well.
Right.
So it's not the speech, it's how it's amplified.
So what do you do is like say let's say there's someone in the media, let's say it's a prominent feminist, and then you have a bunch of people, or let's say just one person, and their Twitter feed is overwhelmingly attacking this prominent feminist, just constantly attacking her, calling her a liar, calling her this, calling her that. When do you decide this is harassment? When do you decide this is hate speech? When, like, how do you? I mean, this is
look at the conduct.
This is an absolute. This is a fictional account, right?
Yeah,
fictional person we're talking about, but in this, for instance, what would dictate something that was egregious enough for you to eliminate them from your platform?
Well, that's a heavy action. So that's a last resort. But we look at the conduct. We look at, oftentimes, as you said, like the probability of someone who is harassing one person, it's highly probable that they're also harassing 10 more people.
Right.
So we can look at that behavior. We can look at how many times this person is being blocked or muted or reported. And based on all those, all that data, we can actually take some action. But we also have to correlate it with the other side of that, because people go on and they coordinate blocks as well. And they coordinate harassment, and they coordinate, I'm sorry, not harassment, but reporting. Reporting a particular account to get it shut down and to take the voice off the service.
Now, that's everything he had to say about how they decide what hate speech is. Because Jack Dorsey at the time is the one who decides what hate speech is. But we know from the release of the Twitter files that that's not true. And that's the thing. This digital safety committee that's going to pop up in Canada, right? They're not really going to be the deciders, just like Jack Dorsey wasn't really the decider. He's saying all these things, but we all figured out with the Twitter files that just wasn't true. Let me play this clip of Elon Musk talking real quick for you guys. Let's get into who's actually controlling Twitter.
There was, and this is coming from multiple parts of the government, from the State Department, the FBI, Homeland Security, from really many parts of the government. It wasn't just one arm of the government. There was this FBI portal that auto-deleted all communications after 2 weeks. So we actually don't know what was said there. In fact, that does strike me as a FOIA violation, a Freedom of Information Act violation, because you shouldn't be able to auto-delete things after 2 weeks. There's a little-known agency in the State Department called the Global Engagement Center, which most people have never heard of, but they might have been the single worst offender, because they demanded the suspension of at one point over 250,000 accounts, which I think all Twitter largely complied with. But they did. The suspension demands were so broad that they accidentally demanded a suspension of a journalist on CNN and an elected Canadian politician. It was just an incredibly broad swath.
So who is really deciding how hate speech work? We just heard this guy say with a straight face that, oh, well, we have all these, this is how we do it. Oh. No. There was actually a portal where the FBI would say things to you and you would just do it. Mark Zuckerberg said, when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they just let us know it was disinformation and we just acted accordingly. That sounds like you're taking marching orders. What do you think this digital safety committee is going to do? They're going to take marching orders. From who? The government, obviously. What do you think, the Psychology Association really thought Jordan Peterson was a problem? Or was it the fact that he just took a shot at the government? It's going to just be real convenient. But again, Twitter files just showed us who actually is in control. It was the FBI. It was the State Department. They were literally just being like, hey, this account said this. Can we just have him throttled down? Can we just turn this all the way down, please? And they would just be like, okay, no problem. We'll do that for you right away. And it happened time and time and time and time again. It was absolutely crazy. So I'm just saying, as much as it sounds like, yeah, these people are going to step in and they're going to help. No, that's not going to happen. It's going to be terrible. And we already know this. If it happened in Twitter and it was happening in Facebook, where else could it be happening? Well, I think it could be happening in a lot of places. But again, we ask the question, Who decides what hate speech is? Now, this is Jordan Peterson talking about freedom of speech and the right to defend. Let's listen to this.
Go on.
The answer to who is going to regulate it in this clip. Now, there he was talking about freedom of speech, and that was at a point where no one understood. No one understood. What is the problem? But it leads to where we are now. And for some people, it may be hard to connect the dots, but that's exactly where it led. When they said you have to do this by law, and now they're saying that you have to, not say certain things religiously. You're no longer exempt to evangelize in the streets. It becomes such a slippery slope. And it's like, why can't I do that? Well, because the things you're saying are demeaning people. Well, then how deep does that go? Are you going to be in a line with someone? How many Instagram videos have we seen where two guys are getting into it at a McDonald's or a KFC or something? It's going to get to the point where one just stops and says, this is hate speech. Call the police. It used to have to get to violence. And no, violence isn't the greatest thing in the world. But when it gets to a point where someone can just say a bunch of things and get in your face, and all of a sudden it's hate speech, we're going to have Karens going to jail because of hate speech? Oh, man. It's a double-edged sword. You like the sound of that, but trust me, it's not a good place to be in for a society. All right, let's get into this last clip. Jordan Peterson talking about the problems with regulating hate speech.
Is there such a thing as hate speech? Yes, obviously. People say terrible things, reprehensible things, quasi-criminal things even, all the time. Brutal, and some of them cause a lot of trouble. So the idea that there's hateful speech, it's like, yeah, okay, that's self-evident, no problem. Well, let's regulate it. Okay, fair enough, because it's hateful. Maybe we'd rather that there wasn't any of it. Okay, no problem. Who defines hate? Well, we'll worry about that later. It's like, no, you won't. That's actually the problem. Here's the answer to who defines hate. Those people that you would least want to have define it. That will be the inevitable consequence of the legislation, because sensible people won't have anything to do with that. Like, people who are power mad will gravitate to that domain to make an ethical case to exercise their controlling power over the language of other people. No, and I've had journalists say, well, what makes you think that your right to free speech trumps the right of someone to not be offended? And I think that's really the level of our political discourse. Okay, so we'll run a little thought experiment. So I'm talking to one person, I'm talking to you, and the rule is I don't get to offend you. Okay, maybe we can still have a discussion about something difficult. But let's say I'm talking to 10 people and about an important thing. Now I have to make sure that I don't say anything, despite the fact that this is an important and contentious issue, that I don't say anything that offends even one of those 10 people. Okay, maybe I can even manage that. What if I'm talking to 1,000 people? There's going to be someone in that 1,000 people, there's going to be someone who's offended at the mere fact that I exist. So it's an impossible standard. It's like, well, you can't say anything offensive. Okay, fine, then you can't say anything. Okay, so what? You don't get to say anything because no one should be offended. Well, then you don't get to think. Well, what happens if you don't think? Well, then you can't negotiate your way through the future, and you fall into a pit, and so does everyone else. So that's where that all ends up. You can't say offensive things. Equals, you cannot negotiate your way properly through the future. Equals, everyone suffers. Well, that's a bad strategy. So, and it's all covered up with, well, it would be better if no one was ever offended. It's like, well, who thinks that? You know how naive you have to be to think that? How you have to be pathologically naive, which is the kind of naive that you could have grown out of, but you willfully refused to because you weren't willing to see what was in front of your face. And then you impose that blind naivety on everyone else because you don't want to allow them to upset your rosy view of yourself and the world. There's no end to how terrible that is.
Oh, man. Very passionate about it. As he should be. As you should be. Very, very passionate about this whole thing because it leads to very bad places. And the fact that it's already happening in Europe, The fact that it's already happening now in Canada, you're seeing people. Joe Rogan mentioned a gentleman that was arrested in Belgium because of his memes. How deep is this going to go? And as they start making this memes and jokes and pre-crime, by nature of that, you have to up surveillance. You have to. If all of a sudden you have this hate speech and pre-crime and all this stuff, they're going to be like, well, in order to exact it properly, we have to kind of know what's in your text messages. And you have nothing to hide, right? You're not committing pre-crime, are you? It gets absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It reminds me of this video. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's this video where all these people, I'm just going to try and type it in, are trying not to offend each other in a classroom. Let's see if it comes up. It's this video where these people are trying to not offend each other. And somebody says something like 2 + 2 is 5. And someone says, no, it's not. And then every single time someone offends, they get taken away. And they're like, what do you mean? And they're all getting carried away one by one by one. And I can't find it right now. I wish I could. But if I find it in another video, I'll just show it to you guys, whether it's about the video or not, because it's really important for people to see. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And other than that, I am out. Share the video. It helps tremendously. And please, if you're in Canada, Bill C63, please start speaking about it to the people around you. Please, don't be silent about it. Do not sleep while this is being proposed and pushed into law. I'm out.